You're listening to episode number 52 of the She Who Dares podcast. Welcome to the She Who Dares podcast. I'm your host, Brandee Gaar. I'm a small business entrepreneur with almost 20 years of experience in the event industry, and I've spent the last decade creating multiple thriving businesses, growing a dedicated team, and teaching others to do the same. Each week, I'll share an inspiring conversation or message to encourage you to follow your dreams to start or scale your business. Thanks for hanging out with me this week. Let's jump into the episode. Do you know that email marketing is the number one way to serve your audience and convert them to clients? If you aren't already sending emails to your leads, you are missing out on a huge piece of the marketing puzzle. Emails are a great way to share about you, your team, or the values your company stands for. You can share new blogs, tips, strategy, or sales you have coming up. We spend so much time focusing on a beautiful Instagram grid and Pinterest boards, but only 6% of your entire following will actually ever see the things that you carefully post. With emails, you have a captive audience and you can deliver your message right to their inbox. I use Flodesk for my business because they have the most gorgeous email templates, and it's literally so easy to use that I actually do it myself. And you guys, I do not know tech at all, okay? I'm telling you, do not wait any longer to start an email strategy to help you close more sales. Buying and engagement season are literally just around the corner. Hop over to brandeegaar.com/shop to use my discount code for Flodesk to receive 50% off of your subscription for life. That's only $19 a month for as long as you have it. Once again, it's brandeegaar.com/shop for 50% off of your Flodesk subscription for life. Hey, podcast friends. Welcome to episode number 52. I cannot believe that I'm actually saying that out loud. And I'm not sure why it's surprising me so much because I rarely set out to do something and quit in the middle of it. But I don't know that a year ago, well, I shouldn't say I don't know. I for sure know that a year ago at this time, I had no idea what this journey of the last year of podcasting would bring. Literally no idea. And I really thought over the last couple of weeks, what do I want to share in this 52nd episode? And I've probably overthought it, to be honest, because I want so badly to make an impact and for you to be able to learn from things that I'm doing behind the scenes. But I really thought I want to share a message that everyone can take with you, but also give you a peek into what the last year's looked like for us and for me being this podcast host and getting to come to you every single week and bring a new message and really not taking that lightly. I don't take your time lightly. I get so excited to be able to spend time with you and to give you these messages and to be able to impact your life and your business. And so I don't take that lightly at all. I get so excited about it. And so I really thought to myself, the thing I hope that most entrepreneurs know or that they could learn is, gosh, you've just got to get in the game. And I talk about this so often. And so that's why I really thought, yes, the 1 year anniversary episode has to be get in the flipping game, take messy action. And the reason I really want to say that to you guys is because if I would have waited to start a podcast until we were ready, I still would not have started a podcast. Because the last year has been learning by trial, learning by having my feet put in the fire. Like it's just been, screwing up. We have screwed up so many things over the last year, but from the outside looking in, it looks polished, right? It looks professional. Hopefully you guys are thinking that and you enjoy coming because our listenership is growing. And so I know that from the outside looking in, it looks different than what it is on the inside. And so I want to share a little bit about that journey because I want to encourage you so much, whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's that you want to start a business or if you want to add a new piece of your business like I did with podcasting, you have to just start. You have to learn a little bit and then start and then learn more and do better. When you know better, you do better, right? When you know better, you do better. And that is what it is all about. But you can't know better. You can't learn by sitting on the sidelines. You can't learn by watching. And the scariest part of all of this is putting yourself out there. I remember telling people that I was starting a podcast and I literally would be so tongue-tied because I didn't even know what to say. And I thought people are going to judge me. People are going to be like, why would you start a podcast? Like, what do you even have to say? And you know what? None of that happened. Well, and if it did, it happened behind my back and I didn't know. And that's totally fine. Like, I was happy to be blissfully ignorant if that was happening. But here's the thing. You have to be okay just putting yourself out there. And I love that. I love that so much. And so I really thought for this 50-second episode, I am going to take you through 10 times over the last year that we have taken messy action. And I just want you guys to be able to get a peek behind what it actually looks like behind the scenes, behind what you hear. And that way you can understand. You think from the outside it looks so easy and that you're like, I couldn't do that because Brandee has all the resources, or she can do it because she has X, Y, or Z. Guess what? I don't have those things. We have just started before we were ready and we're just doing it. So are you guys ready to hear these ridiculous 10 things? I had to really think back. Okay, what are the 10 things I want to share with people to let them know how crazy this sometimes can get on the inside to bring them this polished podcast on the outside? Okay, so here we go. So number one is that we started before I even knew what the purpose of the podcast was. Honestly, before I even had a title. Why that is kind of funny, looking back, at the time, it wasn't funny to me at all. I was flipping out. But Ira and Arthur, who was our brand manager at the time, both thought it would be a great idea for me to start a podcast. I really had never even listened to podcasts at the time, which is funny now because I think, oh my gosh, I'm such a podcast junkie. But at the time, I didn't even really listen to podcasts. So I thought, gosh, okay, I started listening to different ones. I started getting hooked on, Jenna Kutcher, Amy Porterfield, Gary Vaynerchuk, and those were some of my favorites. I thought, okay, I can do this, but what's my purpose? Like, what do I have to say? And so Arthur encouraged me just to try to write 3 episodes. So I thought, okay, I did. And so I kind of wrote 3 episodes out, but we still didn't have a purpose for the podcast. The original vision for it was we were going to call it Behind the Brand. It was going to be stories about how I started Blush and 11 and how I built a team. And I was just going to really kind of talk about peeling back the layers or peeling back the curtain of my brands and how we built them. And so then we found out that there was actually already a podcast called Behind the Brand, and it's quite popular. And so I thought, while I could start a podcast of the same name, that is something that people do. I thought, I'd like for anything that I do to be successful. And if this podcast takes off, then I could really have a challenge with it having the same name. So I thought, I don't want to do that. And so what we did was I went ahead and did a brand photo shoot for the podcast with Kristen Weaver. She is incredible. She's amazing. And I came into the photo shoot with this tank top I've had for honestly probably 8 years. I was wearing this tank top and it said "She Who Dares" on it. And I just wore it to the shoot because it has a big neck and I could take it on and off easily. So I brought all these outfits to wear, and she said, as we were changing, she said, "Hey, why don't you put that tank top back on that you wore into the shoot?" And I was like, that tank top is old. And she was like, "Yeah, but it's really cute and it would look cute with your blazer on too. And I like that it shows your shoulders." And I started laughing and I was like, whatever. And so I put it on, and when we got the pictures back a week later, I was dying because I was like, these are incredible. I did not look like that at the shoot. She is a magician. And what was really cool is that Arthur immediately texted me. I think it was like midnight. He texted me and he was like, "That has to be the name of your podcast. She Who Dares has to be the name of it. These pictures are incredible. It's exactly encompasses you. You can take it in a million directions. That's what we have to name the podcast." And that's how the name of the podcast ended up being born, was because Kristen made me put on this goofy tank top that I now love because it's in all of my images. But she made me put it back on because she was like, "I just think it's a great shirt for the shoot." And so that's how the podcast was born. That's how the name of it was born, right? And so we still didn't really have a purpose for it, but we just kept treading forward, one foot in front of the other, right? Okay, so that's number 1. So number 2 kind of goes along with that same story. Arthur had encouraged me to write the first 3 episodes and to just tell 3 stories about who I am and how I built my brands and what I did, right? I actually spent probably 3 weeks trying to write these episodes because I was still running a business. We had one of the busiest fall seasons we've ever had in 2019. And it was crazy. I'm trying to write these episodes. I'm not a great writer. I love video. I really enjoy talking now into the podcast mic, but I'm not a great writer. But I knew that I couldn't just sit down to the mic and riff it. So I wrote out the episodes word for word. And I also met with a good friend of ours who's a pastor, and he's excellent at writing sermons. He helped me to say, you speak about 100 words per minute. So if you want to have a 25-minute episode, you need to write about 2,500 minutes or 2,500 words. And I thought, great, that's super helpful to me. So I wrote way more than that. And somehow when we sat down to record, each of the episodes was still only 12 minutes. And I was literally crushed. I cried. I was like, I've worked on these for 3 weeks. I don't have time. There's no way I can do a podcast where I am spending this much time writing and it comes out to 12 flipping minutes. I can't do this. It's not sustainable for me because I have a million other things going on. And like I said, I really didn't want to set out to do something that I was going to fail at and that I didn't enjoy. And this was the opposite of enjoyment for me. I was literally so crushed. I was so upset. And to be honest, I didn't even like the episodes. I didn't even like the stories that I chose. And so I said to Arthur, I need a minute. I just need to back up and figure out how this is going to go because this isn't going to work. So I remember being at a volleyball tournament for my oldest daughter. I thought to myself, okay, wait. What do I love? I love hearing stories of how people built their businesses and success stories. It's my favorite thing to talk to somebody about. And so I started thinking, what if I interview other people? Clearly, I can't sit in front of the mic by myself. I love hearing their stories. I have so many incredible friends that I'd love to share their story of their success. So I sat there, and during the volleyball tournament, I listed 52 people that I would like to interview. And I did that because I thought if I can get 1 year of guests listed out, then I will feel like I can do this, right? It's sustainable. And so that's what I did. I listed out 52 people that I wanted to interview. And I thought, okay, this is how this is going to go down. And so Arthur convinced me to use one of the first 3 episodes that we recorded. It was actually what ended up being episode number 1. It was very short and it was just finding your why and a little bit about mine. And so it just talked about my why and why I was doing this. And so he convinced me to keep that one. We trashed the other 2 because they were terrible. And I started getting to work inviting friends on the podcast, which is really fun. That really goes into number 3. And so number 3 in my messy action is I had to just start asking people to be on the podcast. I had decided on the first 5 guests that I was going to invite onto the show, and I had to ask them, hey, will you be on my new podcast? Now, I hadn't come out with the podcast yet, and so they didn't know I was starting one. So I had to get up the cojones to say, will you be on my podcast? And by the way, I'm starting a podcast. And every single one of them said, I would love to be on the podcast, which completely was so amazing of them. They didn't even care what it was about. They were just like, of course, whatever you're doing, we will be part of, which made me feel incredible. But all of them asked me, so why are you doing this? And I still to this day can vividly remember standing in my living room with Tally and Roberta from episode 3. They were my very first guest interview because episode 2 was with my husband. They were my very first guest interview. And they said to me, why are you doing this? What's your purpose behind it? And I literally was like, I have no idea. And I remember, and Arthur looked at me and he was like, you've got to come up with a better answer than that. And I was like, I don't have one. I don't have a better answer. That's it. And so they still recorded with me. Everybody still recorded with me. But at the end of the day, I really didn't know what my purpose was at the time. I just thought, I have a lot to say and I want to get it out to the world, but I still had to figure out how that was going to happen. And these guest interviews really helped me to get other people's stories out. And I figured out that I'm actually a really good interviewer. I genuinely love hearing their story. And I think that comes through on the microphone. Or at least that's what I've been told over the last year, is that people really feel warm and comfortable when we're chatting because I am actually as interested as I sound in their story. We kind of just chat and have a conversation. And I want to learn all about their trials and their challenges of starting their business. Here's what's happened from number 3 messy action of listing my 52 guests. I've only gotten through half of them. So we're 52 episodes in. I've only gotten through half. I think I've gotten through 24, maybe even 22 of the original people I put on that list because you will not believe how many doors get opened when you start a podcast. It is amazing how many doors get opened, and people will say, oh, you should interview this person. Or now that I have a podcast, people start pitching to me. And a lot of times it actually is a super relevant episode. So for instance, Paige Griffith, who was on episode 24 of the She Who Dares podcast, I had actually never met her before, but that was right during the beginning stages of COVID. And I wanted to have an attorney on to come talk about contracts and what should be in your contracts. And so someone introduced me to her and she immediately came on the podcast. We recorded that episode less than 24 hours before it aired. And I had to push a bunch of other episodes because that was a relevant topic. It's just so cool how doors get opened. I had Alan Berg on the podcast. Like, that was something I never thought I would get an opportunity to do. He is massively known within the wedding world. And so I thought he's never going to say yes to this. He immediately said yes. I had the ladies from Engage Summits on the podcast. I had Allison Grooms on the podcast. I mean, incredible people that have massive followings and that are known in so many places. And they immediately were like, yes, I would love to be on your podcast. So podcasting has opened an incredible amount of doors. And I want to just say that this is really, really important. If you've ever thought about starting a podcast or really any facet of your business, consider what it can do for the rest of your business. I would never be able to say to Alan Berg, hey, can we sit down and talk about sales for an hour? He would charge me a fortune. But to be on my podcast, I can interview him and share with all of you. And that way he gets exposure to all of my audience. And I get to ask him questions that I can now use to help grow Blush as well. So you guys get that benefit. And then I get that benefit as well. How cool is that? It really opens so many doors for me. And so we still have tons of guests to work through. I have so many guests already lined up and it's so much fun. So that is number 3, listing out those 52 guests and how we've worked through them over the last year. Okay, so number 4 is that I can do solo shows, but it has taken me some time. I don't know, you guys probably have not even noticed this, but the very first episode, like I talked about, was a solo show that Arthur convinced me not to scrap and throw on the floor. And then I did not do another solo show until episode number 9. And now I will say, even when I did episode number 9, that was so hard for me. I still remember recording it. I had written it out word for word, but for whatever reason, that message, it was kill the duck, was so heavy on my heart. I felt like I had so many people around me that needed to hear that message, including myself, which was, we look like we have it all together on the surface, but underneath we are literally paddling to save our lives and it's too much. And so I really wanted to get that message out into the world. It was only a 16-minute episode. I hated recording it because I had to sit in front of Arthur and Ira while they watched me record this episode. And they were like, do you want us to go in another room? And I was like, no, it's fine. I just was super stressed out. It was overwhelming. I didn't love actually recording that episode, but I loved the message. And that show had more comments than any other show we've ever done, which was the Kill the Duck episode number 9. People kept DMing me saying, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I needed to hear. Thank you so much. And that really gave me the confidence to say, okay, sometimes when I have a message on my heart, I need to sit down to the mic and I need to record it because other people may need to hear what I'm saying to myself. Right? And then I did not do another solo show until episode number 20. And it was called What I Learned from Being the New Kid. Again, I really felt like I had this message on my heart. I recorded that one in my daughter's closet on my iPhone. And I said to Arthur, I have this message on my heart. I really want to talk about this. I don't think I can record it with you guys watching me. I need another way to record it. And he said, listen, go to the voice memos on your iPhone, try to voice memo the whole thing and send it to me and I'll see what I can do on the back end to edit it. And I was like, okay. And because I was able to sit in the closet by myself and record straight into the microphone and just talk to my audience, it was a total game changer for me. As soon as I realized I did not have to have people around me, like Arthur and Ira, watching me record, and I could give a message directly into my iPhone, it immediately was a game changer for me because now I was able to record solo shows and I could get messages out that I felt like were really, really important. With that one, I would just say, learning how to do solo shows was part of the messy action for us. Number 4 is just figuring that all out. Okay, so number 5 is equip equipment does not matter. Now, Ira will kill me for saying this, and probably some sound techs that are listening to this as well. But at the end of the day, I want you guys to know I recorded so many episodes on my iPhone into voice memos. It's actually shocking because once I realized I could record directly into that, it was like, yep, I'm going to record all my solo shows this way. And yes, it was harder in the editing side. And I totally know that because they had to, whatever they do, equalize a bunch of things. For me, it was the only way I could actually sit down to the mic and be comfortable because I was able to do it by myself. I could mess up and re-record. I could pause and let them edit out the pause. And I felt more comfortable. I didn't have to be like live on stage. And so what I would say to you is equipment doesn't matter. Start with the equipment that you have. Start with GarageBand and your iPhone and voice memos. Like, it doesn't have to be the perfect mic and the perfect editing equipment. It doesn't have to be that way. And for anything else that you're doing, don't overthink it. I tell people this all the time. I have clients, coaching clients that'll say to me, oh, I need to rebrand my logo. I need my website to be perfect. I need my Instagram to have 1,000 followers before I actually launch. And I'm like, how do you think you're going to be able to do any of that? What you need to do is focus on selling your service. You don't need to have the perfect website. You don't need to have the perfect logo. Yes, you need some things so that people take you seriously, but just start, put something out there and then hustle your butt off and just start. And then as you get better, as you bring on more sales, as you have more funds to be able to do these things, you can upgrade. Now we have podcast mics. Now we have better editing equipment. We have things that we need to make it easier on the editing side, but I did solo shows into an iPhone, you guys, and I sent them to Arthur through GarageBand. Like, it's so simple. Don't overthink it. Okay. So number 5 is just don't overthink it. Equipment doesn't matter. Just freaking start whatever it is that you're going to do. Okay. So number 6, this is funny. I just have to share this with you guys. So we recorded with Lauren Grove. She was on episode number 21 and it was called The Details Behind Every Last Detail. And she was so gracious to record with us via Zoom. And at the time we were recording all of our episodes in person. So we had never recorded an episode via Zoom. And so I was freaking out. I was so nervous. I told her that she was going to be our first Zoom recording and she was so gracious. Oh my gosh. But I was freaking out. I was like, do we know how to do this? Are we sure we know how to do this? I want to make sure that we don't have to have her go through wasting her time with us. And we were 100% sure we had it all right. We get it all set up. We record the entire episode. It was over 40 minutes long. We recorded the whole thing. When we got off, Arthur looked at me and said, I don't think you ever hit record. And I was devastated. I mean, tears, frustration. I was angry. I was sad. I just was like, I couldn't breathe. I'm not even exaggerating when I was like, there's no way I can go back to Lauren and tell her she just wasted an hour of her time telling me her entire story. And I can't go to her and say, hey, I never hit record, so we're just not going to air your episode. Like, what was the right way out, right? And so I waited a day because I was so upset. We tried everything. We tried everything to see. Maybe I did hit record. I didn't. And so... Guys, here's the thing. Number 6 is sometimes you make mistakes and you have to go to the person and say, I made a mistake. And that's okay. It makes you human. It makes you human. At the time, is that what I thought? No, I didn't. I was like, I'm horrified. I'm embarrassed. I cannot believe I have to go to her and tell her I just forgot to hit record. I'm such an idiot. I made such a much bigger deal out of it than it was. And guess what? When I finally went to Lauren and said to her, here's what happened. I forgot to hit record. I said, it's totally fine if you do not want to re-record, but I want to give you the option to, because I really think your story is amazing. And she said, you know what? I actually had a really bad day right before we recorded. And so I would love to re-record because I felt like you could feel it in my energy. Now, I couldn't feel that in her energy, but once we re-recorded, it was like a whole different interview. Like, she was like a whole different person. And the episode came out so much better when we re-recorded it, and it ended up being a blessing to her because she felt like the energy she had that day had come through in the initial interview. And so it ended up being a blessing for both of us. I had to learn to be okay making mistakes. Like I had to be okay with I'm human and sometimes I am going to make a mistake and I have to be able to admit that. And it was great for her because she got to then re-record an even better episode. And so I just want to encourage you, you're going to make mistakes. And no matter what you're doing in business, you're going to make mistakes. And that just happens. And you have to be okay in saying, here's the thing, I made a mistake. It is what it is. I'm so sorry, but what options do we have? And so I think that that is a really great lesson for any business owner, is to know at the end of the day, you're human and people understand when you apologize and you act like a human. So don't try to cover it up. Just be honest. Okay. So number 7, we learned that Ira should never, ever be gone during podcast recording. So number 7, we used to always record in person. Pre-COVID, all of our episodes were recorded in person, except for the Every Last Detail episode I just talked about. We had always recorded them in person, and we have a black lab whose name is Jack, and we love him. When Ira is not home, I think he realizes like he has to give us more protection than normal. It's just how he is. When he's gone, he always barks so much at every little sound. And so on this particular recording day, Ira had a lot of things to do, and he was like, Brandee, I can't stay here. I'm going to go. Jack will be fine. He will be completely fine. Well, we were recording with Mark Leggett on episode number 33, and Mark is such a good friend of mine, and he was so gracious. We had to stop recording that episode so many times, probably like a dozen times we stopped recording that episode because Jack kept barking at every stupid thing. We put him outside, he kept barking. We put him in my bedroom, he barked. I was so annoyed with him, and Mark was so incredible. Arthur had his work cut out for him because he had to edit the heck out of that episode because there was so many times we had to stop. And I felt so bad for Mark because I kept obviously having to say, hey, let's stop recording. Then he would have to get back into his train of thought. It ended up being such an incredible episode. It's one of my favorite episodes because Mark has built such an incredible business, and I love listening to the leadership skills that he talked about in episode number 33. But oh my gosh, that was such a challenging episode. And I said to Ira, you can never ever be gone from this house when we're recording again because Jack is a nutcase and he made everyone insane. So, you live and you learn and you deal with the environment around you. I mean, we've been recording and our neighbor has decided to cut his lawn, or we're recording and an ambulance goes by. There's so many goofy things that happen, but you try your best to control the environment as much as you possibly can. Okay, so number 8 was a really fun one. And this is kind of a blessing in disguise as well, in that our only experience with recording via Zoom up until COVID hit in March of 2020 was this episode with Lauren. But all of a sudden COVID hit, and all of the interviews that we had scheduled to record, actually the week that COVID kind of hit our area, had to be rescheduled. And at that point I was like, we can't continue recording in person because we can't bring people into our home. Everybody's on a total lockdown. And so we had to figure out how to record via Zoom. And so number 8 was actually kind of a blessing in disguise because what I realized once I started recording episodes via Zoom is 1, that we could do it as long as we hit record. 2, it actually expanded our reach a lot. And so now people that were coming to me and saying, hey, I'd love to bring a subject to your podcast that didn't live in our area or didn't live in our state, I felt a lot more comfortable with recording with them because now I could just say, hey, yeah, let's jump on Zoom. We can record. And it opened up our reach. We've interviewed people from all over the country at this point. And we actually have people coming up in season 2 that'll be recording from the UK. And so it's really cool to see how that ended up turning into a blessing, that COVID kept us from being able to record in person. But now that we felt super comfortable with recording and editing Zoom interviews, now we literally have the world as our oyster. We can record with anyone. And so that ended up being kind of a blessing in disguise. That was number 8. We had to figure out how to record differently. We had to figure out how to do things differently. And really, when you learn how to do something differently, it can end up being the way you do it forever. and it can be better than the original, right? So I love that. I love that we had to get scrappy. Okay, so number 9, I will share super vulnerable with you guys. This is actually kind of funny. So I tend to not eat in the mornings, especially when I'm busy, because I just go. So I wake up, have my coffee, do my morning routine, and especially on long recording days, because we typically record episodes one right behind the other. So we would record 4 or 5 episodes in one day. And if they went long, I would not have time to eat in between. I remember especially one long recording day, and my stomach was growling so much. And Arthur was like, he kept looking at me because our guests couldn't hear it because they sit kind of far away from me, but it was being picked up in the mic. And I was dying because he kept looking at me. And so I knew that he could hear it. My stomach was so loud. When our guests left, he was like, Brandee, I have got to figure out how to get that out of the recording. And I was horrified. I was so embarrassed. And he's like, from now on, I am going to make sure you eat before we start recording, because this is crazy. Like, you can't you can't have your stomach growling in all of the episodes. And I was dying. But so learning lesson is take care of yourself, right? I'm so bad at this. And I know so many of you listening are bad at this too. We just go. You have to get kids off to school. You've got to get everybody settled in the house. You've got to get all the mics set up and sound checked. And I just didn't have time. And so I do this a lot. I don't take care of myself first. And, it actually affected our episodes. And so it didn't, because Arthur was an editing genius and he was able to fix it. But it made things super challenging. And of course, it was so embarrassing because I was like, I don't know if our guests can hear it. And I know Arthur can hear it. And he's like cracking up. And I'm trying to stay focused on my interview and my stomach is growling. So anyway, number 9 is take care of yourself. Make sure that you take care of yourself so you can show up as your very best. And number 10 is, as I thought about the last year, it has been an interesting year. Some of the things, with COVID, you guys know we're in 2020. I'm recording this in October of 2020. We're about 7 months into the craziest pandemic that we've ever experienced in our lifetime, and really in the world's lifetime, right? And that has brought us to having to make some tough decisions in our company. By God's grace, we parted ways with Arthur, who was our brand manager, and he is a lot of the reason that we started a podcast, because he already knew how to do it. He had all of the equipment already, and it was something that really excited him, and he pushed us to start the podcast because he believed that I had a message to get out into the world. He really did all of the editing. All I had to do was show up to the mic. I did not have to do anything else. He did everything else, all the graphics, all the editing. When we parted ways with him about 8 weeks after COVID started, it was such a blessing for him because Arthur is a ministry leader. He's a pastor. He actually got just an incredible opportunity with a local church that he gets to serve and pour into his ministry, and they pour into his family. And we're so happy for him. What we had to learn from that is that we had to figure out how to continue running a podcast, or if we were going to continue running a podcast without the person who had always done our podcast. I said, I'm enjoying the podcast. We were about 30 episodes in at that point. And I said, I really enjoy it. I love bringing this message to our listeners. And Ira was like, yeah, you're definitely going to keep doing this. I think it's a really good thing. It's really impacting people. It's bringing great messages to people. And so we started looking for a podcast manager, somebody that we were going to hire and bring into our company. Now, the hard part about that is that the podcast actually does not bring in revenue. So Blush pays for all of the back end of the podcast, which isn't that expensive unless you need to hire a podcast manager specifically for podcasting. So Ira was like, I don't know if this is the best time to outlay that kind of cash for something that doesn't bring in revenue. And he said, I think I can learn how to edit the podcast. I think I can do it. And I was like, babe, you have a million things going on. And here's the cool part. My husband has always always believed in me more than I believe in myself. 13 years into our business, he has always been the one to say, you can do it, and here's how I'm going to help. And he loves being behind the scenes. He's probably going to hate this part of this episode as soon as he hears it while he's editing it. He does not like it when I bring to light all of the things that he brings to our business. But here's the really cool thing. Ira didn't just learn how to edit the podcast. He has really brought so much peace to me in that I can screw up the podcast. I can sit down to the mic and I can say something ridiculous, and he knows my voice. He knows what message we want to get across. He will come back to me and say, hey, I think you should re-record this part, or I'm going to take this part out because I don't know that that's really what you wanted in the message. Maybe you kind of got a little long-winded or whatever. And so he really captures my voice so well. He loves me more than any other human I think that exists. And he works so hard to learn how to edit this podcast and learn how to make the graphics and learn how to put rich keywords into the search. And it's just incredible. And so have a cheerleader in your corner. You know, Ira just believes in me so much, and he never, ever, ever would let me stop doing something that he believes is impacting other people in such a positive way. And, you know, every time that I thought I was going to give up on Blush, he was like, no way, I'm more in than I was before. And every time. And with the podcast, it was the exact same way. And what's really cool about that is that Ira used to handle 100% of our books on the back end. And when he started taking over the podcast and now our YouTube channel, which will be, oh my gosh, which is so crazy that he's taking over our YouTube channel. When he started doing that, we realized that it was really a lot for him to continue doing our books. And so we were able to outsource a lot of our bookkeeping, which is something he's always actually hated doing, but he does it because it was necessary. And so now he's so happy. Like, he's learning so much about things he actually loves, which is editing video and editing podcasts. It's just been really, really cool to watch him flourish in his role on our business, but also that now him and I get to work together so much, because for Blush, I would do weddings and he would be on the back end. And so while we got to work together, we were never actually kind of really together, if that makes sense. And now we sit right next to each other in our office, and he's editing and I'm recording, and he's telling me what he wants me to do on video, and I'm making that happen. And so it's really, really cool. And it's just been really fun. And to be honest, I never, ever, ever thought this is where we would be a year later, but I love every single second of it. And so I hope you guys have learned a little bit about what the last year has looked like for us. And I hope that it inspires you to say, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to take messy action. I have to just start. I have to just put one foot in front of the other in whatever it is that you're trying to do in your business. Stop waiting for everything to be perfect, because it won't be perfect. Our podcast still isn't perfect. It's still kind of chaotic on the back end, to be honest. And I can't wait for the day where I can say, yes, every system is completely in place and we do it all to the exact system, but that's not where we are right now. And so right now it's a lot of Ira and I just scrapping it together on the back end, and we enjoy every single second of bringing this message to you every single week. And so I hope it inspires you. I hope that you love it. If you did love this episode, hey, share it with a friend. Tell somebody about the She Who Dares podcast, and make sure that you are subscribed, because if you're not already subscribed, you won't know when we put out episodes. They won't drop into your phone. And so you want to make sure you hit that subscribe button. And you guys, thank you so much for joining me every single week. I cannot wait for season 2. The lineup of guests for season 2 is literally off the chisel. Like, it's so incredible. We have so many people that have reached out to us and said, hey, I want to share this with your listeners. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. We have so many guests that'll be sharing powerful messages with our listeners. And so make sure that you tune in for season 2. And you guys, I will see you next time for the first episode next week. Thanks so much.